Welcome to The Nameless. This story is not for everyone, but if you're still here, take a deep breath. Let's begin. He said the cameras caught something moving behind pump 3, but there was no one there. That was the first thing my coworker Mike told me when I showed up that night. It was around 11:30 p.m., a few minutes before my shift started. The air was cold, and the fluorescent lights buzzing over the parking lot gave everything that sickly green tint I'd started to hate. Hollow gas station sat off Highway 19, about 10 minutes outside a small Pennsylvania town. It wasn't the kind of place people hung around after dark. Truckers stopped in to grab coffee or energy drinks, a few locals to buy cigarettes. Otherwise, it was quiet. Usually. Mike looked uneasy. He wasn't the type to scare easily, but that night he kept glancing at the security monitors. The black and white feed showed all 6 pumps, the front counter, and the back room door. Pump 3 sat right under the broken light, the one that always flickered. On the screen, I could see nothing but shadows. He pointed. "Right there. Look close. You'll see it." I leaned in, expecting to see a reflection or a cat or something, but he was right. For about 3 seconds, a faint, blurry shape moved across the screen right behind the pump. Then it was gone. We replayed the footage twice. There was no car, no wind, no person. Just that weird distortion moving slow, like a shimmer in the air. Mike laughed it off, but it didn't sound real. "Probably a glitch," he said. "Camera's been acting up." He left a little before midnight. I was alone by the time the clock hit 12. Working nights at Hollow Gas wasn't supposed to be creepy. It was just boring. I'd started a few months earlier, right after college didn't work out, just trying to make rent. The job was simple: clean the floors, stock shelves, keep the coffee fresh, and don't fall asleep. The place itself was old, built sometime in the 70s. The floors were cracked linoleum, and the air always smelled faintly of oil and burnt coffee. A radio behind the counter played classic rock until around 2 in the morning, when the signal got fuzzy and I usually turned it off. Most nights were the same: a couple of regulars, some half-asleep truckers, and maybe 1 or 2 weirdos passing through. But nothing like that night. It started subtle. Around 12:40, I heard a faint thud from outside. It sounded like something heavy hitting the ground near the pumps. I glanced at the cameras. Nothing. Just that same broken light flickering over pump 3. I grabbed my jacket and stepped outside. The cold hit immediately, sharp and silent. The highway beyond the lot was empty. I walked past the pumps, half expecting to see someone crouched behind one, but there was no one. The air smelled strange, metallic, like ozone after lightning. When I turned to go back in, I noticed something. Pump 3's hose was swaying slightly, like someone had just brushed past it, but there was no wind. I stood there, staring, trying to rationalize it. Maybe Mike had been right. Maybe the camera was glitching, and now I was just imagining things. I went back inside and locked the door. The rest of the hour was quiet. I stocked the cooler, wiped down the counter, and scrolled my phone. Around 1:30, a car finally pulled in, a silver sedan with out-of-state plates. The driver, a middle-aged man, looked tired. He came in to pay for gas. When he handed me his card, he nodded toward the window. "You got someone out there?" I froze. "What do you mean?" He squinted. "Thought I saw someone walking between the pumps when I pulled in. Looked like they were wearing gray." I told him no one was out there, but my voice didn't sound convincing. He filled up and left quickly. When his taillights disappeared down the highway, I checked the cameras again. Still nothing. I decided to take a look one more time. This time, I kept the door unlocked, but propped it open with the rubber mat so I could hear if the chime rang. I walked straight toward pump 3. There was something about that broken light that drew my eyes. It flickered in uneven bursts, almost like it was responding to something. I knelt down to check the base, thinking maybe the wiring was loose. That's when I heard it. A sound, low and brief, like a breath. It came from behind the air pump station near the dumpster. I stood up fast. My heart was hammering now, but I couldn't stop myself. I took a few steps toward the sound, flashlight in hand. The beam cut across the empty lot and stopped on the dumpster's edge. Nothing. I exhaled, half laughing at myself. Then, just as I turned to go back, I saw it. Something shifted near pump 3 again. A faint, shimmering outline, like heat rising off asphalt. It wasn't solid, but it was there. I could see it move between the pump and the car wash wall, slow, like it knew I was watching. I took one step closer, and it stopped. Then, in that same instant, the flickering light above me went completely dark. The parking lot fell into silence so deep it made my ears ring. That's when the store door chime went off. Someone had gone inside. I ran back, the gravel crunching under my shoes. When I pushed the door open, the store looked exactly the same. The aisles were still, the radio was silent, and the air smelled like burnt coffee again. "Hello?" I called out. No answer. I checked behind the counter. Nothing. I even looked down the short hallway that led to the stockroom. The back door was still locked. But on the counter, right beside the register, was something that hadn't been there before. A receipt printout, curled and fresh from the machine. The timestamp read 1:47 a.m. No transaction number, no card type, just the total, 000. I stared at it for a long time. The machine only printed receipts when a transaction completed. It couldn't just print by itself. I ripped the paper out and threw it in the trash. Then I locked both doors, pulled the blinds halfway down, and turned the radio back on, just to break the silence. A few minutes later, I heard the air compressor outside turn on. No one was at the station. From then on, things started to unravel. Every 10 or 15 minutes, I'd hear something new. A faint knock at the glass, a shifting sound near the back room, the quiet click of the cooler door opening. Each time I checked, there was nothing. At 2:25, I heard the back room door creak open. That door always stayed closed. It led to the tiny storage area and the breaker box. The handle was one of those old metal ones that stuck if you didn't twist it right, so it made this specific metallic squeal when it turned. I knew that sound too well. When I looked toward it, the door was cracked open an inch. The motion light inside had turned on. I don't know what made me walk toward it. I think part of me just didn't want to believe I was losing it. But the closer I got, the colder the air felt. My breath started to fog, even though the heater behind the counter was still humming. I reached out and pushed the door open. The room was small, just a few shelves of cleaning supplies and a humming mini fridge for overflow drinks. Everything looked normal, except for the smell. It was faint but distinct. Wet concrete, like the air after rain, even though it hadn't rained in days. I backed out and shut the door, locking it from the outside. I sat behind the counter, trying to calm down. I kept telling myself there had to be a reason for all of it. Static from the cameras, drafts, maybe even carbon monoxide, though the detectors hadn't gone off. Still, the silence pressed on. Then, around 2:50, the phone rang. It was the old landline we barely used, meant for emergency calls from the main office. The number showed as unknown. I answered, expecting maybe a check-in from the owner, but there was only silence. Then, faintly, I heard static, and underneath it, the same breath-like sound from outside. A long inhale, followed by a short, shaking exhale. I hung up immediately. When I looked back up at the security monitors, every feed had changed. Pump 3's camera was showing the inside of the store. I could see myself sitting behind the counter, staring at the screens. My reflection, or whatever it was, moved a second after I did, like the feed was on a delay, or like it wasn't me at all. Then the screen flickered, and I saw something standing behind my image. A tall, gray blur, almost human-shaped, leaning just over my shoulder. The lights flickered once, and the screen went black. I don't remember exactly what happened next. I think I ran. The next clear memory I have is standing outside, near the far end of the lot, watching as the store lights flickered from inside. Every window showed nothing but white glare. I could still hear the air compressor running, a faint hum that didn't stop even when I unplugged it. After a few minutes, everything went dark. The hum stopped. I waited another 10 before going back in. The store was completely silent. Every screen on the monitor wall was frozen, the same frame on each one. Pump 3 empty under that broken light. I didn't finish the shift. I left a note for the morning manager and drove home with the radio turned off. They called me the next day to ask what happened. Apparently, when they checked the cameras, the feeds from that night were corrupted. All of them except one. Pump 3. That one still worked fine. It showed me walking outside around 1:40, flashlight in hand. Then it cut to static for about 20 seconds. When the image returned, I was gone. For the next hour, the camera stayed fixed on the empty lot. Nothing moved, no cars, no people, just that faint flicker from the broken light. At 2:50, right around when I'd gotten that phone call, something appeared. A faint shimmer like a heat wave drifting across the pavement behind the pump. It moved slow, almost curious. Then it stopped and faced the camera directly. The screen froze there, mid-frame. That's where the footage ended. I quit the next day. I didn't even go back to pick up my last check. A month later, Mike texted me. He said they'd replaced the cameras, rewired the lights, everything, but strange stuff was still happening. Motion alerts triggered when no one was there, pumps starting themselves after hours. And one night, the register printed another blank receipt at 1:47 a.m. He joked about it, said maybe the place was built on some old fault line or magnetic field. But then he wrote something that stuck with me. I think it's watching through the cameras. I never replied. Even now, when I stop for gas late at night, I catch myself checking the corners of the lot, half expecting to see that flicker again. I know what I saw that night. Or maybe I don't. But every time I close my eyes, I still see that frozen frame, the empty lot under the broken light, and the faint shape facing the camera. And sometimes, when the house is quiet, I swear I hear the soft click of a receipt printing.